Todd, what do we make of the buzz that was going on yesterday? Is it all just clickbait? As I know Jane Slater said, is it all clickbait, the idea that Najee Harris is of interest to the Dallas Cowboys?
That's what I was told as well. And sometimes, these things just get started and you're like, come on, what are we doing? Should we even respond to this kind of stuff in a lot of ways? And, I was told it's not happening, not a thing. But this is the thing when it comes to the Cowboys, right? There's always that little part of the back of your mind where you say, well, it kind of makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a guy who's in a contract year and he's out after this year. And what would you have to give up? And you never know what Jerry, even though Jerry hasn't made you never know what Jerry move in however many years it's been.
1 year, Trey Lance.
Right. Well, that was a fourth-round pick. Come on, Bobby.
That's true.
It looms large sometimes, right? Those fourth rounders.
Maybe it kept them from getting a running back this year in the draft. But I don't think you'll have to worry about Najee Harris coming here.
It's funny, Todd. We've been talking about the running back position, and they've clearly decided to build, through the offensive line. That's how they're going to address their run game. But it's funny that when you look at the running back position, are we setting up for a potential, one of the things we've discussed here, are we setting up for a potential repeat of the receiver situation in 2018 where they said Deontay Thompson, Allen Hurns, that'll be enough, we'll be good. And then they got, 7 weeks in the season, they went, okay, this wasn't good enough. We got to go get somebody now. And then they go out and get Amari Cooper. Not that they trade a first-round pick for a running back, but do you think we're setting up for, at some point, they're going to have to go get somebody?
Well, then factor in Jerry mentioning at the post-draft press conference saying, look, we can always still go out and trade for somebody, and you have all the way up until the trade deadline to get a player to improve a position. So it certainly shapes up that way. And isn't it fun? I immediately thought of that same scenario, Bob, that you just mentioned, that they thought Deontay Thompson and Allen Hurns, that were set at receiver, and now they still had Beasley and all, these sort of things. But it was so obvious, even in training camp, you're like, wow, these are the guys, huh? And it just never, it never happened. And now with the running back spot, to me, the Zeke signing is fine, provided Zeke is in the role he was in last year in New England. The problem is the Cowboys don't have Ramondre Stevenson to pair him with. So how do they can the committee, usually you think of a committee, you think of two guys. Can the committee really be 3 guys, 4 guys? What is the fewest amount of rushing yards a Cowboys running back has had to have led the team? I might have to look that up when we're done. I don't know what the answer is. But I also go back, I've been covering these guys since 2003, and that was the year Emmett was gone and Hambrick took over as the lead runner. You know how many yards he had that year?
Ooh, 972.
How crazy is that?
Was it 972?
It was.
Damn, nailed it. Wow. That is the savant in me. Go ahead, Chop.
That's not the word I would use, Bobby.
No, I wouldn't either.
I don't think you can use the word you want to use on the air, Todd.
Todd Archer joining us here on the D&M Leasing Hotline. What do they really think Zeke is, though? Do they have an idea, a misguided theory that he's still a number one?
I think it probably depends on who you ask. And I think if you ask Jerry, clearly Jerry saw a guy in the last 5 games of last year who averaged more than 3.1 yards per carry in those games just one time. Jerry still thinks he can be a number 1 back. Now, I think Jerry's being nostalgic here a little bit. But I think if you talk to other people in the building, that they'll say they know what he is and they know how they have to use him and he's not the same guy. And I think those are part of the conversations that they had with Zeke before they brought him back when he met with them, what was that, the Tuesday or the Wednesday before the draft, and then over again at the Lincoln Prime. I think they Mike McCarthy, the coaching staff, laid out what their vision is, and it's not for Zeke to get 230, 240, 250 carries. It's, what was the last year in New England? It was 180, probably elevated because of the last 5 games that he had to start when Stevenson got hurt. So you're talking, let's just say 150. Now, if Rico Dowdle gets hurt, which he probably will because he always does, that number is going to tick up a little bit. If Deuce Vaughn doesn't take a a leap, or the coaches can't find a way to get him involved in the offense, that number might tick up a little bit. And then you're in a situation we talked about where week 5, 6, 7, they're looking for a running back. And honestly, part of me wonders if they'll be looking for a running back the entire summertime and hopefully be truthful to what they're seeing out in Oxnard and in the preseason games. And then someone might shake free from some of these teams that have 3 or 4 guys that have established more than what the Cowboys running backs have established beyond Zeke. And I guess I got to throw Royce Freeman in there too, because there's some love for that guy over there from what he did in limited time last year for the Rams. But again, if they took a running back in the 3rd round and paired him with Zeke, I don't think there would be as much consternation about the running back position as there is right now.
Yeah, I mean, especially with the Leah Fowl pick being at the back in the 3rd, who I know they're excited about, and who I know you saw a lot of people complain about it on Twitter. I know it came through your mentions too, but they're higher on than what the national draft analyst community has to say. We're talking to Todd Archer from ESPN on the D&M Leasing Hotline. Todd, they address the offensive line like we mentioned. They draft 3 different offensive linemen. Right now, if you had to guess, week 1, how many rookies are starting on the offensive line for the Cowboys?
I'm going 2. I'm going both those guys, and not Nathan Thomas. BB at center and Tyler Guyton as their left tackle. And if that's not the case with Tyler Guyton at left tackle, then that has to raise some alarms. And I realize, I don't want to be a reaction person and going over the top, but they've said that this guy is a great athlete. They don't think it's a problem moving to the left side. The last time they drafted a lineman in that position was Travis Frederick. He came in, and now I know it's a center. Came in, played right away, was a starter. Tyler Smith a couple of years ago came in right away, showed that he could play left tackle after spending pretty much all summer at left guard before Tyron Smith got hurt. They have a track record of success. There'll be a lot more eyes on Mike Solari this year than there was last year when we're looking at the development of this offensive line.
Todd, if I had asked you, right after the Green Bay game, would Dak have a contract before week 1? Your answer would probably be very, very high. Where would that percentage be right now?
It wouldn't have been.
Oh, it wouldn't have been. Okay.
No. I think one thing we all miss in these Dak talks, and it goes back to the first time around, Dak's waiting as much as the Cowboys are waiting.
Okay.
Because the more he waits, the better it is for him, right?
Mm-hmm.
So unless they bowl him over, or unless he doesn't tell his agent, hey, I'll take whatever you want to consider a team-friendly deal, this thing's going to go until, in my mind, the start of the 2025 league year on March of next year. March 13th, I think the number is, the date. So that's the absolute drop-dead date, because once that date passes, he's gone. He's going to be on the open market, and someone's going to pay him. It's the Kirk Cousins thing. So all we need to do is go read every story that everybody in Minnesota wrote about Kirk Cousins in his final year in Minnesota and just repeat it for Dak, because this is how it's shaping up. I'm not surprised. And now, can something change? I think something changes if Dak gets involved in the talks more than he has been at any point in his career.
It's interesting when we talk about Dak and him, hey, waiting a little bit longer is beneficial to him financially. And if he hits the open market, somebody will pay him at a ridiculous amount and he'll get that money. Is there any aspect of this that, is there any factor involved in these negotiations of, does Dak have any Cowboys fatigue, or do you think his heart is still full, I want to be a Cowboy for life? Because it seemed like a couple weeks ago when he was at that Aikman charity event, that was the first time we've ever heard him say anything of the sort where he says, hey, if it's not in Dallas, so be it.
I thought there was some fatigue the early part of last year, maybe even in some bits of training camp, and there has been some back and forth between him and the organization. Who's the Cowboys sponsor for beer? Miller Lite.
Mm-hmm.
Who's Dak's sponsor? Bud Light.
Mm-hmm.
There's some, little, twist of the knife there, maybe a little bit going on. And there's some other situations that I know that had arisen over the last few years of who he has a deal with, or who he almost had a deal with compared to a Cowboys sponsor. But I'm with you, Bobby. I think there's an element of every little thing that he does or doesn't do gets magnified so much more than any other quarterback. Not any other quarterback. Most of the quarterbacks in the NFL, and where if he misses one pass, he stinks. If he makes one pass, he's great. And that's tiring for all of them. It was tiring for Romo, I know, but and they say that they ignore it, but I just don't know in this day and age how you can ignore it when social media is so prevalent, when everybody can get in your timeline and say what they want to say, and you can say you turn it off. I view the people who say they don't look at social media the way I did years ago when people actually would say, I don't read what's in the paper. To me, that always meant you're reading it from front to back. So I wonder if you say you're not reading social media, that means you're on it as much as Jalen Smith was on it when he was a linebacker here.
Todd Archer joined us here on the Dean Leeson Hotline.
That wasn't a good line. I thought that
it was good. I was laughing. I was laughing away from the mic because I didn't want to be too rude.
I think we're like maybe a couple of weeks away from Micah going to Russia and doing the Rocky IV training. What do the Cowboys think of this? Of his Instagram training routines, sumo wrestling, and getting punched in the sternum by a boxer?
I will say this, Choppy. I know you're a baseball guy, and you whatever home run derby contest you went to, you always won. I always thought hitting a baseball was the hardest thing for a professional athlete. But sometimes I look at some of these people who throw a baseball, and I wonder, geez, maybe throwing a baseball
might be.
These guys. I think there's really nothing they can do about it. I think there's some frustration. There's some angst that he's not there. And I think part of the issue is when he's in the offseason saying, I want to change the culture of this team and be a louder leadership voice. Well, this is when that's built. And the fact that he's not around now, I think frustrates some people over there. And not everybody, and not to the point where, like, you know, they're tired of him where they want to get rid of him now. You know, I still think they want to sign him, and they realize he's a really good player. And look, you don't just get rid of guys like Micah Parsons at all. I don't mean to go down the Shan path from a couple weeks ago that got you guys in trouble.
Twitter's a mean place, Todd.
Yeah, I think. Look, let's see what happens with the mini camp when that's mandatory. I'm sure he'll be here. Let's see if CD's around for that as well. But it is one of the first questions you have to ask Micah when we do see him again is what he said in the offseason about changing the culture and being a leader, and then he's not been around. And look, he had a great season last year doing his training down in Austin the way he did. I don't remember him taking the punches to the gut. I don't remember the sumo wrestling and all that stuff, but that he did in 2023. But I think the Cowboys know when he shows up, he's gonna be fine. And when the season starts, they're gonna pencil him for 13, 14, 15 sacks again.
Todd Archer, ESPN here on 105 to the Fan. Thank you, man. Appreciate it.
You got it, guys. Thank you.